how are you?
Hi, fine, good to see you. You're looking great, Maka.
Thank you. You also. I'm so happy to have you here in CPTED Talk. Your experience is very relevant to spread all around the world.
Oh, well, okay. Let's be modest a bit.
Yeah, good point, good point. I will start, Paul, reading your biography, a summary, because it's very extensive, your biography, and then we will start with the questions.
Okay.
So Paul van Soomeren is one of the founders of the Amsterdam-based research and consultancy company, DSEP Group. Customer-oriented and critical, creative and analytical, programmatic and building on solid research. Paul loves sound analysis, good evaluation, and beautiful, clear text that encourage reflection. His ways are something provoking, often confronting, but always with the intention to find consensus, reach common goals, and get results. Paul studied social geography and urban and regional planning at the University of Amsterdam. He worked for the Dutch Ministries of Justice and Interior Affairs, National Crime Prevention Institute, for 3 years before he founded DSP Group in 1984. Paul is director of the board of the International CPTED Association, Crime Prevention through Environmental Design for Europe, as well as director of the Dutch Designing Out Crime Association. In that capacity, he travels all over the world to lecture on these subjects. Areas of expertise include urban planning and design, crime prevention, safety, security, education, and social management. So Paul, welcome. I know you have a much longer CV biography, but we will start with the questions because we know you have so many topics to share with the audience.
I'm old, so then you have a long CV. And I'm not traveling that much anymore because of COVID, of course. So
yeah, of course,
I can do more from home now. Yeah.
Yeah, we know. We are suffering the same in all parts of the region, unfortunately. So we will start with the beginning. How did you start in CPTED, Paul?
Well, you already mentioned I'm a geographer and an urban planner. And after my study, I started to work at the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Interior in the Netherlands. And that was very early work on crime prevention. It was the beginning of the 80s, I think, 80, 81, maybe even 79. So I quickly became interested in crime. And well, by education, I was an urban planner and a geographer. So if you mix these two, then you have crime prevention through environmental design. So
right.
that was by then starting off in the Netherlands quite a lot, also in the UK. In the Netherlands, it was actually seen as one of the best approaches to crime prevention. And we did a lot of work on that. We worked a lot with people from the Home Office in the UK also. But also, for example, I had discussions, fierce discussions, by the way, with Oscar Newman. Syria Jeffrey worked a while at the Ministry of Justice over here in the Netherlands also. So it was a kind of an international mix by then. So that's how I became interested in crime prevention through environmental design, which we give another name, by the way. We talk by then about crime and built environment or something, or crime prevention and built environment. And we always had the idea that we were not only talking about the physical built environment, but also the people in it. So it was a kind of a mix of a physical approach and a social approach to crime prevention.
And for example, from the public authorities' perspective, they accepted from the beginning the idea to link environment, behavior, and crime?
Yeah, that was by then, crime was really rocketing over here in Western Europe. So it went, crime was always rather low in the 50s and the 60s of the last century. And then it started rising and rising, and it became worse and worse. So in by the end of the 70s, the police realized that, and they said that, and they put it in policy papers also, where we are not able to work on crime, to tackle crime as police only. So the justice and the police system said, okay, now we are lost. There's too much crime, and then they tried to involve other people. And then you had an official policy approach, which was called crime prevention, with the focus on youth, for example, working with the Department for Youth Affairs, but also with the Department of Housing and Environmental Affairs. It was called by then. So from the 80s on, it was very high on the agenda, because the police and the Justice Department simply recognized that, okay, we cannot solve this problem on our own. So the reactive type of approach of crime has well, we still use it, of course, and it's still necessary, but we cannot do it alone. And if you go on longer and longer, so in the 80s and the 90s, crime prevention through environmental design became popular, very popular. Also the social approach, the youth-focused approach. But then in the around 2000, crime started to decrease, and there's a lot of proof that CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, on the social and the physical side, worked and had an enormous effect. The Nobel Prize winner Jan van Dijk, for example, showed this several times, and also researchers from the UK, like Farrell, for example. And then the political situation in 2005 changed a bit, and the whole political approach became more offender focused again. So that went on for, say, another 10 years, and now we are a bit back to, okay, we need to, it is like a clock going like that. So reactive, and then it goes to prevention, and we are now on our way back to prevention again, I would say.
Yeah, I read your paper, one of the many papers you have, but in one paper you explained that that analysis, taking the timeline as a basis, that is very interesting, explaining the clock phenomena, how it moves from one position and then it turns to the opposite position.
Yeah, but the biggest problem we had over here in Western Europe was stuff like burglary and theft and all this kind of material goods, which theft was important, vandalism. In the Netherlands, bicycle theft was an enormous problem.
Wow, I imagine.
Too
many bicycles all around.
Everyone is on a bicycle here, so I remember that my bicycle was stolen nearly every year. So that was becoming a big problem. But burglary also, and also violence. Though if I compare it with the nowadays situation in South and Middle America, violence has never been that big a problem over here. So that's something new, which was brought in the last few years, mainly by you and other people from Mexico, Honduras. All the people from the Americas focused very much on violence, and that's for me, that's very, very interesting. So I never realized you can use CPTED that good for violence prevention also.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have the problem here. So it's like a very big laboratory. And for us, it's something that we need to set with the context. And unfortunately, Latin America, the Hispanic region, is the most criminogenic region in the world. So we need to start facing so diverse and many problems.
Yeah, I think the society over there is more a violent and macho type of society compared to Western Europe. Anyway, that was the beginning of it all. So I started working at the Ministry of Justice and Interior, but then after a few years I realized I wasn't the perfect civil servant. So then I started my own company together with Bram van Dijk, and that's a bit a joke gotten out of hand. It became bigger and bigger, and well, we are now about 40 people. And we're
Great.
doing, yeah, we're doing a lot of research and research in CPTED and crime prevention, but also in culture, welfare, sports, youth, elderly people. So we have that whole array of different types of research, and we can use it very much also for crime prevention, because if we combine crime and crime prevention with, for example, youth or welfare or health approaches, then you often have a very good combination.
And it's very good to have, on one hand, the research that makes the scientific evidence and everything, and also practical interventions. So you combine both. That's great.
Yeah. So when we that's a bit maybe an English tradition, also Anglo-Saxon type of tradition. So we are rather pragmatic over here, and we say, okay, let's give it a try, and you can try anything to prevent crime, but then the only thing you have to do is include a bit of research and see if it's working, and if it's working, how weird the policy might be. If it's working, it's okay for us.
Yeah.
So we are still hired as a research bureau and consultancy bureau by the police, for example, by the ministries, by the cities, even by the Secret Service from time to time, and then you do a lot of what we call evaluation research. Okay, does it work? So this is the policy. Does it work? Does it work? Yes or no? And how can you make it better? A kind of quality type of.
This is very relevant. It's an evidence-based approach. So congratulations for that, Paul. And maybe this connects with my next question, because you are very expert and you are working on standardization. And I want I want to ask you, please explain to the audience a little the work that you have done with the CPTED standard in Europe.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with something which was done in the UK and the Netherlands. That was a label to prevent burglary in houses, house breaking. So after a few years, we had a whole set of measures you knew would be useful to prevent a burglary. It was have a good lock on the door, have a good light, have good visibility and surveillance, have people who have coherence in the neighborhood. But we have all these separate measures, and then suddenly, and it was an invention done in England, in the UK, they made a kind of one package of it, and they said, okay, let's put it all in one box, and we make a box of say about 50 requirements how to prevent burglary or theft or crime in a neighborhood. So then we in the UK they invented what I call secured by design. We called it the police label safe and secure housing, and it was a rather simple set of about 50 requirements. But then we realized, okay, you can always tell people they have to do it, but it's easier if you sell it in a nice way. If you put it in one box and you make it interesting for them. So at that moment, it becomes a kind of a standard, and that was the first standard in the in the Netherlands and also in the UK, which is still existing. And later on, it proved very, very efficient. And then when we had done that it was by the end of the 80s, I think the Danish people, Bo Grönlund, came to the Dutch Ministry of Interior, and they said, well, we have a Danish standard, and can we make that a European standard? They asked me to be the chair of that group, and I started working on that, and I found the idea of making a European standard intriguing right from the start. So we could go one level higher, you might say.
So it started as an experiment. It was very experimental.
Yeah, it was a kind of an experiment, because at first a lot of well, we included more and more countries, and what we did is then we had a new country, then we visited that country, we visited a few neighborhoods there, and we looked at their problems, and okay, so it went on, and in the beginning we were looking for a kind of a, you might say, separate rules like surveillance, visibility, access control, that type of stuff. But if you have all these countries in Europe, it is so enormously diverse. So it goes from Iceland in the north, or Norway, where the windows are that small because it's always snowing there, and it goes to the south to Greece, where everyone is in the street in open air. So then after a while we realized that, okay, we can use the separate ideas, but the most important thing is that we should make a kind of a process, and we took that idea also from standards like the quality, the 9000 ISO 9001 standard, which is actually a quite simple standard. It says something like, okay, look what the problem is, define the problem, make a kind of a set of goals, start working on it, and evaluate if it worked. So that's what we did. So we made a European standard, which was a combination of the CPTED ideas in combination with a process standard, in which you could say, okay, step by step, you have to work together, not only the police, but you have to work together with a lot of people to solve the crime problem in a specific neighborhood or city. So that became a European standard, and you have a whole bureaucracy for these standardization stuff. It's called Comité Européen de Normalisation, the European Standardization Organization. And then they issue a text like this, and very official, and all countries vote for it, and etc., etc. And then it has to be revised every few years, etc., etc. So it has become a kind of an official thing. Later on, we also made a standard on terminology, definitions, and also standards on houses, how to work on crime prevention for houses, for public transport. Well, it is now there's a whole set of standards. So that's
great.
That's what we did. And that's how I met a lot of these people. Yeah, so that's, I met Tim, I met Bo Grönlund. A lot of these people are from that network.
Yeah, and also I want to highlight that you are the leader of the ICA Committee of Standardization, the Standardization ICA Committee. So this is a super key position, because ICA is in a process of renewal. We have a strategic and business plan led by Tim Pascoe that is changing many things inside the institution. And we are initiating the umbrella initiative, and we will connect we will articulate many regions of the world. So your experience with the European standard probably could be used as an example for other regions or could impact other regions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's very good. And actually, we are already working that way, because I mentioned that each standard has to be updated or revised once every few years. That can be 5 years, 10 years, but at a certain moment the clock goes on, and the official bureaucracy says, well, you have to renovate this this standard. So then, and this time it was the Czech people from Prague, Czechoslovakia. They came to me again, and they said, well, you have been the chair, can you do this revision too? And I'm working on that with Tim, but Tim Pesco. But Tim and I quickly said, well, it would be super if we could somehow include all that knowledge from the ICA. So a standard is actually, it's all about a rather simple text on how to do things, how to do crime prevention through environmental design. So we included a group of experts from the ICA, and they are now also officially included in this process. So the outcome might be a European standard, but we can also use that in a more general way, maybe worldwide. So
it could be great. It would be a very good service for the different regions of the world. Asking for a standard. For example, we had a webinar 2 weeks ago, and some people from Argentina asked me about accepted standard. So different regions are very aware about the process, and they are waiting to have final products that they can consider.
Yeah, you can always give them the old standard. So we have that that standard is available. And the good thing about standardization is you can buy it. You have to buy it, but you can buy it everywhere. In every country in the world, there is a standardization institute, and you can simply go there and ask for this standard. And if not, you can always contact me. And there is an official standard, and later on, Italian, French, and Spanish people made a kind of a manual to go with it. So a standard is always a bit dull, and it's a bit like a law. Yeah, it's not very vibrant, you might say. But together with a manual, then it works fine. So you can already use that, but well, it badly needs an update, and we're working on that.
Yeah, and you will consider in this update, Paul, also some learning process that we had with the COVID crisis, for example. You will update the information, taking on account, for example, how to make more safety parks or public spaces, preventing COVID or something like that.
Yeah, in that respect, the whole COVID crisis is interesting for me also as an urban planner, because suddenly you realize that, for example, very near a neighborhood, a green space, or within a neighborhood, green space is very important, where people can go to, keep their distance, but relax. So you see these differences between several states in Europe. You can see that in Spain, in the big cities in Spain, they have more problems compared to the city where I live in, where there's a lot of, well, I'm looking here at an open square, so we have more than enough space over here. So this is one lesson. Another lesson is focus less on cars and more on bikes and walking and that type of. So you have these lessons, and you can include them.
Yeah, perfect. And my last question, can you make a comment to share with the audience? Can you describe the benefits of becoming an active ICA member?
Well, what I always found very, very, very useful from the beginning, it started, my first ICA conference was, I think it was in Florida. So that must have been somewhere in the 80s when I went there. And the good thing about these ICA membership is that you are in touch with the literally the world of expert in CPTED. And even if you sometimes don't understand what these other people from completely other parts of the world are talking about, but in a way, if you listen well, you can learn so much from each other, and not in a literally way that you do exactly as they do it. So I look at what you are doing in Chile, for example, but I, I cannot use it in a very strict way, but the ideas behind it are important. So you can learn from looking at what other people do, the problems they are having, they are facing, and learn from that quite a lot. And you have a kind of an official organization for that, with a great leadership nowadays. By the way, yeah. So that's another thing. This whole ICA used to be a very North American and European thing, but the last few years, the whole of America, the middle of South America also participated, and India now, and Australia, New Zealand. So we literally cover the whole world, and it's really fascinating to have talks with all these people. Sometimes you have to get
Yeah,
out
it's
of bed
great.
early, but it is intriguing
Yeah,
to do
right.
that.
Yeah, when we have the Zoom meetings connecting with different regions. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But the world is changing, and so ICA, it's evolution, it's evolving.
Sorry, ICA.
It's evolving.
Yeah.
It evolves. Yeah.
And one of the good things is this type of Zoom meetings. When we started somewhere in the 80s, the 90s, we literally had to come together
Yeah.
and write letters or mails or that type of stuff. It took days to communicate, but now you can simply, well, you open your laptop, and I just had a conversation with a lot of people on WhatsApp about the definition of first and second generation system.
Yeah.
And you
Today
can
it
do
was
that in
very
a few
nice. Yeah.
seconds nowadays. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you say closing remarks, a strong idea that you want to share with the audience about CPTED?
Well, I think CPTED is a very important approach to do something about crime and to prevent crime, but it is bigger than that. So it is about quality of life of a lot of people, quality of life of neighborhoods, of countries even. So it is important to share this knowledge, and the ICA is a perfect way to do that. So crime prevention through environmental design. Well, the last few years, I'm actually thinking, is that first C, that crime, we have to grow bigger maybe, and to make it a Q, the quality of life actually. So how to make a better quality of life on the physical aspects. So that's about building, that's about roads, that's about bicycle paths and foot lanes, lights, that's physical stuff, but also the social stuff. And I think mainly in the work you did in Chile, but also other countries, that's really great, working with children, and that whole social approach to crime prevention, to have these children. I'm still impressed by what I saw in Honduras, when you saw all these
Yeah.
drawings of the children with their dreams, and
Yeah.
that they're dreaming about playgrounds, and that, yeah, that's important.
Yeah. It's
And
very nice, this
that's a way
initiative.
of
Yeah.
doing research. Actually, I'm a researcher, but doing it this way is also important to use this knowledge from children and other people simply by using their drawings.
Yeah, the native wisdom of the native experts is the spirit that sustained that initiative. The cloud of the dreams. This is the initiative. But I'm so happy to have you here, Paul, and thank you so much. You know so much. I hope I had a complete day to interview you.
Well,
But I don't have so much time, unfortunately. But I want to thank you so much for the time, for sharing so much experience, for leading the standardization committee in the ICA. That is a super huge task. And I hope all the audience that like this video can give us a like. That is very relevant, so we can promote it. And I hope to see you very soon, Paul.
okay, thank you. Well, and good luck. Bye-bye, and keep healthy. You.
You too, you too. Bye.
Yeah, bye.